think by a couple of minutes it is indeed afternoon. We have an excellent program which our Vice President for for academics, Dr. Mike Brown, will introduce in a moment, and will introduce our esteemed panelists as well. But if I might, I'm going to just make a couple of quick announcements about upcoming events that are, I think, some importance, in fact, are of importance. One, on October 30th, we're having a Campus Equity Week event. And if you haven't yet, you will be receiving rather detailed information about it. It will center around the upper quad, right next to Fitzell, plus using the area near the inside in the main door. And they're very important, as I'm sure all of you know, and some of you are indeed adjuncts. Our adjuncts start, the normative pay is $3,000 per course. Very limited job security. That's not appropriate. And this is an event that hopefully is going to forward visibility and change in terms of the status of our adjunct faculty who make such great contributions, and contingent and part-time. It is, because I saw you looking up, Anne Marie, but it is. But if I can just kind of finish to get to the event, so it is with contingents, part-time, and also, of course, our adjunct faculty, embracing all of those. Second event, and we would like you to stop by some of the time and get detailed information. Second event, lo and behold, and we're not spending any money, at least this chapter, we have a train. And we never interviewed Jesse James. He accommodated a few trains in his time. And it's a great train. It's an excursion train, which years ago that Lorraine had, made our first entry into. That it's going to run from Cooperstown, the Blue Lot, off of Linden Ave. And Lorraine has sent out, with Kerry's always great assistance. Oh, right here, Kerry's right in front of me. With Kerry's great assistance, Lorraine's directions, you won't have difficulty getting there. We only have, though, we have 38 people signed up. We only have about 5 or so slots left. Is that correct, Kerry? So if you're interested in going, it's 1 to 3. Saturday, November 4th. We do need an exact count, and it's going to be a great time. Oh, we're going to do some chapter building along the way, but we'll let you have a great time as well and get refreshments. And what a great time to hug the river and to be doing that route. This is just the ideal time of year. So if you can go, please join us. We still have a few slots, not many, but we need an exact RSVP. So without further ado, to today's program on balancing profession, work, and life. And I'm looking forward to this answer because I've been looking for it for a long time. I will let our Vice President and our organizer of the event and our moderator for the event, Dr. Mike Brown, make the introductions.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Thank you all for joining us today. As you know, the issue of work-life balance is a complicated one, and I'm sure that everyone in this room has struggled with the issue at some point in their lives, or you are currently struggling with it, as am I. UUP has made some significant inroads in this regard with the faculty course release program outlined in Chapter 24 of the contract, and the 4-day-a-week summer schedule that is available to most professionals. However, it is incumbent upon the administration to work with UUP to ensure that faculty and staff are not overworked. Departments and units are consistently understaffed, not overstaffed, and we are constantly being asked to do more with less and for less. Work creep is a real thing, as I'm sure you've all experienced, and we must not only be aware of it when it's happening, but we must also be willing and able to curtail it. Saying no is not always an easy thing to do, especially for those who do not have continual appointment. Our panel today will offer some strategies and approaches that have helped them reach a better balance between their personal and professional lives. However, we need the administration to fully invest in our faculty and our staff. After all, our working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And with that said, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. Darryl Wood, our Labor Relations Specialist for UUP. Michelle Hendley, Reference and Instruction Librarian. Laura Madeline Lincoln, Director of Alumni Engagement. And Dr. Danny Noorlander, Assistant Professor in the History Department. So before we get going, I'll just lay out some basic ground rules. The panelists will have about 8 minutes to speak. After those 8 minutes, I'll start waving a orange piece of paper at them so they don't go over like I let them all do last time. And this will allow us to have a question and answer or discussion period afterwards. The event is being videotaped, however, the camera is pointed directly on the panelists, so no worries about your anonymity. In terms of questions, we have paper on the... No, not this time around. You can always, if you need to ask a question, if you want to ask a question anonymously, you can always scoot over here and ask me, and I'll be happy to ask the panelists for you. Okay, with that said, Mr. Darryl.
So, I don't know if I want to stand here in front of this mic, but can you all hear me if I just stand here? Okay, good. So, what I'm going to do is spend less than 8 minutes, I promise, quickly reviewing the contractual benefits that you have that are related to work-life balance. And I'm going to just sort of go through them serially with not a whole lot of annotation, and then later on we can ask questions if you have them, okay? So, and they're tied to specific articles. So Article 21, which is 23, excuse me, which is the leave article, provides for sick leave, both family and individual sick leave. So you have up to 30 days to take care of your family. Your family is not like third cousin twice removed, but grandparents, siblings, obviously children, spouse are considered family. If any of those people actually live in your household, so the third cousin once removed actually lives in your household, then they would be included. Also, for academics, you have sabbaticals. That is a way for you to kind of get away but still be working. There are also things called Title F leaves, which were originally designed for professionals. Essentially, they're the same as sabbaticals, and there are academics who also get Title F leaves. Article 27 is professional meetings. Professional meetings, essentially what it says is that the state and UUP agree that attending professional meetings is important. That allows you to develop as a member of either the professoriate or as professional staff. And again, most campuses, and I know Oneonta has funds available for professional development, clearly not enough, but those funds are available again to assist you. Health insurance, Article 39, also again provides for health insurance. Broadly stated, dental and vision are handled through UUP, but prescription and all your other doctor and hospital stuff is through the New York State Health Insurance Program, which depending if there are HMOs in your area, you can get HMOs, otherwise you're basically doing a night shift. So the Benefits Trust Fund, I talked about that a little bit. It provides for professional development monies, IDAs, individual development awards, because we're outside of the time of the current agreement. Those funds are suspended, but those are additional professional development monies that are available to you. There's a campus-based committee, joint labor management, with both labor union appointed members and management appointed members. There are some limitations, but again, it's another source of funds for you to do things. There's a safety and health committee that again deals with safety and health issues, that actually the campus can request funds for some of those things, and campus grants. So again, broader concepts, broader issues that the campus might want to deal with, there are opportunities to get additional funding. Family benefits article, which is 46, really talks about the dependent care account. There is money that you could put in pre-tax, and then the state kicks in additional monies that allows you to take care of child care, dependent care, parental care. All of those things are available as well. And again, these are all about so that you can offload some of these concerns, problems, issues that you have onto other places, and again, hopefully make life a little bit better in the long run. The Employee Assistance Program, which is talked about in Article 47, again, a place to go if you're having concerns. There is a tuition assistance program as well. Actually, there are 2 of them available to UUP members. There is a state tuition assistance program, which essentially covers about half of your tuition if you want to take college courses. And then there is a space available program that is specifically only for UUP members. So again, you can take courses and you pay only the fees associated with that. So again, another benefit that UUP has provided. Family leave in Appendix A42 talks about the Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, so which essentially are some federal government guarantees if you have longer-term health insurance concerns for you or your family. And essentially it guarantees your job while you may be out on sick leave or taking care of a family member. There is a leave donation program so that if you run out of sick leave, actually vacation time is donated, it gets converted to sick leave so that you can continue to be on sick leave if you've run out. There's also some presidential discretion in there as well, and the president can give you additional sick leave up to 6 months through that process. Finally, the last thing that I want to talk about in the agreement is something called VRWS, the Voluntary Reduction of Work Schedule. And essentially, that's a way, if you anticipate a longer-term sick leave need, there's a way for you to essentially reduce your salary for a period of time to then be able to continue to be paid so that you can continue to be in benefit status once you've gone out on that sick leave. So for some people that makes a lot of sense. So those are kind of the contractual provisions that I just want to outline very briefly. And then, I was also supposed to, Mike asked me to kind of talk about sort of personal life stuff. And I will tell you the most important thing that I had to balance my work, personal life was my wife. Okay? She was the one that allowed me to do what I've been able to do throughout my life. So having that supportive partner, I would argue, is probably the most important thing. I'm not suggesting you get a divorce if you don't have one of those right now. But having a supportive partner is probably the most important thing in my life. So with that, I'll yield back the remaining time.
Thank you very much, Darryl. Michelle?
Okay, can everyone hear me if I speak from here as well? Okay, great. So the title of my presentation is 3 R's equal WLB, my formula for work-life balance. So I'll explain what the 3 R's are just a little bit later. If you ask my children if their parents have achieved work-life balance, the answer would be a resounding no. My daughter, age 12, has told me, all you do is talk about work. You even talk about work on vacation. Can you please stop talking about work? She has a valid point. We talk a lot about work. The work-related discussion between my husband Matthew, who is a professor in the Department of History here at the college, and who is currently teaching as we speak, and me is intensified because we are employed in the same organization. Work-life balance for me means trying to think and talk less about work at home, and particularly in the presence of our children. So the formula, 3 R's equal WLB, is based on activities that are part of my routine. These activities help to free my mind of thinking of my job, thinking of my job, or not thinking of it when I am off the job. So WLB obviously stands for work-life balance. The 3 R's are rodents, reading, and running. And I'll talk about the rodents first. So rodents aren't for everyone, and initially they weren't for me either. But on the encouragement of my daughter, Sarah, we now are the owner of 5 rodents, 2 guinea pigs, and 3 degus. D-E-G-U, if you would like to Google what that is, what they look like, and what they are. The weekly chore of cleaning their cages is not particularly enjoyable. It is messy and it is time-consuming. But the upside of this activity is that my daughter assists me with the cleaning of the cages. She has a captive audience during this time, me. She will talk, and her topics of conversation are revealing and riveting. She talks about school, friends, food, animals, and her future plans. She asks me many questions. For example, she once inquired if the United States and Japan are allies, and if the two nations were once at war. I learned that she had watched a video on her computer, on her own initiative, on the Second World War, which of course thrilled her historian dad. My mind does not wander to work-related matters during this time. I am focused on her conversation and cleaning the cages. This weekly ritual has become an important time of mother-daughter bonding. Pets themselves are stress busters. Guinea pigs are very gentle and timid creatures. The dagoos are curious, friendly, and trusting. Their demeanor is one of calm, and their calmness is contagious. I think they're cute. Grooming, petting, and observing the rodents has a very soothing effect on me. Spending time in their presence clears my mind. Apparently, there is scientific evidence supporting the idea that pets can improve work-life balance. Pets help to reduce stress, anxiety, and depressive symptoms. They're a huge responsibility, but with that responsibility comes great benefits. The second part of my formula is reading. Reading is another activity which helps me to think about something other than my job. Reading is also restful. I don't read about how to achieve work-life balance. I read mostly fiction, Brooklyn being the last piece of fiction that I read. This is an outstanding story about a young Irish woman who immigrates to the United States after World War II. I also recently completed reading White Rage, The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide. A book about racial injustice is not light reading by any means. Nevertheless, the effect of reading this book and reading in general is that I'm compelled to reflect on ideas and experiences that are unrelated to my job. I like to share my reflections on the books I have read with my husband Matthew, thus providing the opportunity to discuss matters with him that do not revolve around our jobs. Part 3 of the formula is running. 6 years ago, I decided that I was going to become a middle distance runner, that is running between 5 and 10 kilometers. I did not become a runner overnight. It was a slow process to work up to running 35 minutes without stopping. At that time, it was a worthwhile investment. I love to run, and it's not for everyone. It can be, some people have told me they think it's boring. It can be very difficult on the knees, but it has made a huge impact on my ability to clear my mind. I tried yoga, which I loved, but I was not a good practitioner of yoga, as my mind would wander during class to all the bad things that happened at work that day. When I run, I need to focus on my breathing, my surroundings, my form, my feet. There is room in my mind for nothing else. Running also allows me to connect with my son John, who's 17. He's a member of the Oneonta High School varsity cross country and track teams. Attending his local meets are a priority for me. John and I have participated in a number of community charity 5Ks, including the Pit Run, Hot Cocoa Run, Riverside Elementary School 5K, and the Turkey Trot. These events also help me to connect with other runners and engage with the broader Oneonta community. These 5Ks raise funds for local organizations. My participation in them gives me a sense of giving back to my community. John and I are also great fans of elite track events, particularly the Olympics. Last year, he and I spent many hours watching Olympic track events broadcast from the games in Rio. We especially enjoyed watching running greats such as Jamaica's Usain Bolt and Britain's Mo Farah. Our mutual love of running has even led to discussions about the historical significance of the legendary Jesse Owens. I am thrilled that John shares my love of the sport. Running and being a spectator of running clears my mind. Running has become an important vehicle to mother-son bonding. Studies have shown that regular exercise helps to balance work and family. Exercise reduces stress and promotes a perception of being able to take on tasks and getting things done. Running, reading, and rodents. This is my formula. Carving out time to run and read is very challenging. Cleaning the rodent cages is very challenging. However, these activities are essential to help me create the necessary mental space that permits me to bond and engage with my family.
Thank you, Michelle. Ernesto and I actually own 6 chickens, so I think I'm going to get talked into how cleaning the coop is going to be beneficial for me. So thanks a lot for that one. Laura?
I'll have to come help clean the coop if there's eggs in it. I'll give A few weeks ago, Mike reached out to me and asked me if I would be a part of this panel, and I chuckled when I saw his email because many people who know me probably believe and do believe that I don't have a very good work-life balance. Many of you have probably gotten emails from me at 5:30 in the morning or at 9 o'clock at night. As I thought about this, I thought about what does work-life balance really mean? And I think the perception that people have of you about your balance may not be correct, right? People think of work-life balance very differently, I think, and what works for one person may not work for someone else, like me. I actually, believe it or not, do spend a significant amount of time with my family and our 2 dogs, and I actually have carved out special time for me to get exercise in because my dog can no longer run with me, so I have to run and then grab the dog and take her for a long walk because she can't run. Many of you know my husband, and he has a lot of energy, and so involves us in a lot of projects and other community events as well, and we often entertain. In addition to that, my job is unique in the sense that I don't often work a normal 8 to 4:30 position. We have events on the weekends, we travel, we have meetings at various times and conference calls, so it's a really unique situation to try to build into your family life. So as I said, what is work-life balance? I really think it's that prioritizing between work and lifestyle, and it's that sort of like teeter of where do you find your balance, and it's really different for everyone. We have so many things happening in our lives right now, and they're very messy, right? If you have kids, if you have animals, if you have community service work, maybe you've changed positions, maybe you've moved. It's really a messy lifestyle that we all live, and sometimes I think lifestyle is very balanced, right? We don't feel stressed, everything's going really well, and then there are other times where significant things might be happening in our personal lives as well as our professional lives, and then we become really stressed. And so it's never really the same. You never really have, I don't think in some cases, a balance, but it's trying to find what that right space is. I think our social spaces are becoming more ambiguous. As technology grows, we're able to connect with each other in many different ways, and sometimes that's even in our workspace. We often have social media sites up because we're monitoring our alumni and what they're saying and how they're reacting to us. That also means we're receiving information from the people that we know. So I think that makes it unique as well. So as I thought more about this, I thought about it being not about balance, but really integration. How do you integrate your work, your home life, connecting and giving back, and your health and well-being into your everyday life? How do you make that work for you? And for me, family is the most important piece, but I really enjoy the work that I do. I'm very passionate about the work that I do. I want to do a good job. I want our alumni to feel welcomed at all times and feel like we're being responsive. So I often put more time in myself because I feel like that's important. But in most cases, and sometimes this isn't always the case, in most cases it does not interfere with what's happening with my family. So that's what's really important. And I think for everyone that's unique. Some people don't feel that same way about their work. They feel like other things in their lives matter. And it's how do you balance that? Well, I oftentimes have family come to events that we host because we're able to do that. Dave's daughter and son are often seen at reunion volunteering or doing something like that, so we can spend some time together. But I think it's really important to remember that balance is different for each of us, and that it's impossible to figure out what that right formula is. And what works for me may not work for Darryl, may not work for Mike, but it works for me. And I actually do email at that hour in the morning because it's really quiet. I'm up anyway. Particularly at this time of year, I can't run because it's really dark. So that's what I'm doing at that hour, and that just allows me more time later on in the day to do more with our family, to run on my own, or to do something else, to go shopping or spend some time with friends. So the question that I want to pose for all of you is, how do you think, and we don't have to answer this today, but just to think about it, how can you integrate your life and your work instead of pinning them against each other, right? This is not about competing interests. This is about how do you make all of these things in your life work, and how do you find that balance? Some final thoughts. Stop feeling guilty about not achieving what is perceived as balance. Again, it's really what works for you, and what works for your family, not about what someone else you work with does or your friend does. Again, there's no magic formula, and I think if we had that, Bill, I think everyone would make a lot of money here today if we knew exactly, and we probably would have lots of balance because we wouldn't have to work anymore. Right? Celebrate the successes that you have, and don't dwell on the things that you haven't done well or the balance you haven't achieved. And remember what's important and how you'll achieve it. I think that one of my biggest problems, and Lorraine, you mentioned this earlier, is being able to say no. I probably do this actually more in my work life than I do in my personal life. We oftentimes are taking care of other people's animals. We are house sitting for others. We're hosting people in our house. We never can say no to family and friends, and that's mainly because we just want people to be around and we want to feel helpful. And I think we need to be able to do that better, to find that balance. Energize yourself, take a moment. I'm an introvert, I was saying this earlier, and so I need alone time. So running is my alone time, or maybe I'll come home and lock myself in the basement and everybody's wondering where I am. But that's truly how I energize myself and I get back. And set achievable goals for yourself. Don't try to do everything at once. And really be thoughtful and conscious about that and strategic. I also thought about how UUP might be able to help us maintain some work-life integration. And Darryl talked about some programs that UUP offers. And as I was doing a little bit of research, I was looking at companies who've been really progressive in this field and what they're doing. And some of this may not be realistic for us, so I totally appreciate that. But maybe there's a version that would work. I think first and foremost, administration needs to understand that each employee has different needs and priorities. We're all at different points in our lives. Some of us have, we're just starting families. Some of us have kids who are teenagers. Some of us are dealing with parents now who need support. And so how can the administration help us with that? And there are some programs. I think it's also creating a culture of trust among us. Sometimes I do my best work at home. I get more done if I have to take a sick day because one of our kids is sick than I do in my office, more of the work that I need to do. So I think that's really important, and to know that and to trust that if I'm home because I have a sick child, it's not because I'm just sitting down watching TV and eating bonbons. I'm actually doing something, I'm being productive. And it would be nice to be able to say, you don't have to take that sick day. You go ahead, work from home, take care of whatever you need to do. And that may be easier for me because I travel, so I'm used to building that time while I'm on the road into my schedule. So I don't have to be in my office. That may not work for everyone. I know we have the ability to have flexible schedules during the summer, but for particularly myself and other professionals, it would be nice to be able to be offered some flexibility in our schedules. And maybe it's not consistent. Maybe it's You know, if you know, like Danielle, your son plays soccer, you know your son's traveling 2 days a week for team games, and hey, Laura, can I work this time period, or being able to be flexible in that. I think more discretion and ability to allow employees to meet their obligations outside of work, and able to telecommute when appropriate. I think that's important too, having that ability, and I talked about that. It would be great to have time off options for employees participating in community service. I serve on a couple of boards. I'm fortunate, I don't have to necessarily take time off, although if it's a full day, I would need to request time off, and meet an hour here, an hour there isn't a big deal, but for a full day retreat or something like that, or some type of event associated with it, I would have to take time off. And again, promoting and encouraging professional development. I think staying on top of the field, being able to say, I know how other colleagues are doing this. I think one of the skills that we have in our office and that we do well is we talk about what our colleagues are doing and how we compare, whether that's good or bad. Both not only in work, but also with the numbers of people we have in our office. So, and again, I think, you know, being okay with saying no, you know, is having administration understand that sometimes the people who have their feet to the ground need to say no, because we know exactly what's happening. We know what we can manage and we know what we can't. Maybe it's not the right time. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks so much, and Dan.
So, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that I was thought of and asked to participate today because I have way too many kids for somebody my age. I have 4 kids between the ages of 5 and 17, and as we've already heard, they can take up quite a bit of your time, especially as they hit those teenage years, and they have, you know, sporting events and clubs and all of that that require pretty much every evening. So the title of my remarks today, Setting Schedules and Setting Boundaries, not exactly about children. In fact, I won't talk about them at all. Actually, I have more cool stories like Michelle did. But it was really with that in mind that I prepared my thoughts today, just trying to think of how I managed to, you know, survive and be fairly productive, while at the same time not being a stranger, and making sure that my kids actually know who I am. First, a caveat. And I guess it's related to some other caveats we heard here, and that is that I'm no expert on these things. I haven't read any self-help books, haven't even read any self-help books on work-life balance, and so I don't know if there's good research on this kind of stuff. If there is, I have no idea if what I'm going to say today would be considered good. I'm just going to tell you what seems to work for me, and as others have said, take it and do with it what you want. So just 3 suggestions, and this will be pretty brief. I don't think I'll take my full 8 minutes either. Number 1 for me, I'm a list maker. If you come in my office, you'll see these little papers at the top of my desk, and I'm really old-fashioned in this regard, I guess. I do have a smartphone, but I don't know why I have a smartphone. I could get away with a flip phone because I still use pieces of paper. And I have one that I title, there's always 2, and I'm always changing them and updating them, but there's one that's always entitled Big Stuff, and there's one that's always entitled Small Stuff. And on the first I have things like my upcoming renewal application, which if you've done it before, you know requires a lot of thought and essays and things, and so some stuff that you know kind of chip away at over time. And the other one is, you know, stuff you can mostly sit down and do in one sitting. But you know, for me, this is like, I start to feel really stressed, and I have all these things going on in my life, and all these things I gotta do. And when I feel that, for some reason, if I take it and I put it on a piece of paper like this, it's like pulling it out of your brain. Like, okay, I don't have to think about that now because I know it's there, and I know I'm gonna have time to get to it. Right? I will even, you know, if I happen to do something that I wasn't planning on doing, and so it wasn't on my list, I'll actually pull out my list and I'll write it down after I do it and then cross it off immediately, just because it makes me feel better to do that. Number two, so number one is lists, number two is schedules. I'm kind of a dork. My week is so regimented. I'll show you here. I brought, you can't see this, so I opened one up from my email. Every semester I do this, and I have this hanging over my desk, where my week is planned out down to the minute, every hour of every day, what the main thing is I want to do that day. Okay, so just some quick examples. Monday, Wednesday, Friday looks largely the same, because those are the days I teach. I have blocks in there for office hours. I have blocks of time in there for working on the things on this to-do list. Tuesday is my class prep day. I mean, I've been doing this long enough now that most of my classes, all of my classes, I've taught at least once, so it's not quite as burdensome as it once was, but I still like to tweak and add and change and things like that, and so that's the day I do that, and try not to let anything interfere with that. Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons are also the afternoons, just so happens this semester, that are my meeting days. I have department meetings on Wednesdays, I have gen ed meetings and other meetings that all happen to fall on those days, and if it's a week that doesn't have a meeting, then I use those blocks of time for, again, the stuff on my to-do list, which is like grading and things like that. Thursday is my research and writing day. It's actually my favorite day. Maybe I shouldn't admit that because it's a teaching institution, but that is for me sacrosanct. On that day, I do not ever schedule anything else. I am reading for upcoming essays I'm working on, I am writing those essays, I'm doing research, usually on campus, in my office or in the library, but I try not to let anything else interfere with that. Anyway, you'll see I have a block of time on Fridays for editing, because I'm also the editor for New York History. Saturday and Sunday, I put this every year, every semester. I don't even check my email. I hope this hasn't created problems for anyone who's trying to get a hold of me, but from 5:30, 6 p.m. on Friday night until Monday, usually after classes Monday, I don't see what's in my inbox because that's just my way of saying, no, those are my days, I'm going to be home, I'll be with my family and do yard work or whatever. But because the week's so regimented and I have all these other slots and times to do things, I typically don't have to violate that and use the weekends in some other way. Finally, number 3, I guess I've already touched on this, but number 3 is boundaries, and others have touched on this as well. By boundaries, I'm referring to simply staying within the bounds of this schedule here, meaning that if on a Monday I get some request from somebody to do something related to the New York History Journal, I always say, okay, I'll get to that on Friday, because that's my block of time for working on that thing. Saying no, I guess we don't need to dwell on that, others have mentioned this as well. I thought actually today, probably the best way I could demonstrate boundaries was by saying no when they asked me to do this, like sending a note to explain why maybe. So I violated my own rule there, because I do like to be useful sometimes. But I did draw one boundary in the sense that I was really tempted to put together a PowerPoint. And the time, I had my allotted hour I was going to spend on this, and that end of the hour came, and I didn't have time to do a PowerPoint, so I just said no PowerPoint. Anyway, all sorts of other ways that we can say no. Obviously, we do have service requirements if you're faculty, or if you are full-time faculty. So you need to fulfill those responsibilities, but I do like to try to maintain keep the time I need to also be able to focus on my research and my teaching prep and all of that. So sometimes I have and do say no to requests for service, as long as I feel like I'm already fulfilling my commitments. So, I don't know how long that is, I guess I'll wrap up here. Those are my three suggestions. The things that seem to work for me, although again, as we've heard, all of this doesn't always work for everyone. You know, obviously, people here who are in different positions and therefore have different needs and whatever, but this is what works for me. Thank you.
Well, it's my philosophy that rules are meant to be broken, so thank you for agreeing to be here, and thanks to all of our panelists one more time So we have about 10 minutes or so for questions, comments. Lisa.
A question about the cycle of things. A schedule like that works great, except the week before a test. You know, when I have to be available to students. And so every threat says, well, how do you balance that? I mean, do you really say no?
To students in the week before a test, no. I almost always tell them that I'm flexible in those days, and I almost always tell them I'll be in my office even on a Tuesday or Thursday doing that class prep or doing that research and writing, but if someone knocks on my door, I let them in and I do speak with them.
And in the same way, you know, mine can send me an email asking a question about Matt probably doing whatever, and I reply on the weekend.
Yeah. Okay, well I can't because I don't even check it. But I found that it's never ruined anyone's life. I don't think I've ruined anyone's life or even scuttled their semester. So maybe I just haven't been doing it long enough, and I will eventually, but so far it's worked out fine.
You know, as someone who's not a teaching faculty member, I think, you know, getting students to understand or setting the expectation that you don't check email on the weekend, I think that's an important lesson for students to learn as they get older and they're in the workforce, because most likely people aren't going to respond to them on a weekend if they have a work-related question or something else, or texting. So I think that's a great life lesson, and it teaches them that they shouldn't be checking their email on the weekends. You know, as they get older, you know, that's a really great life lesson to use, I think, if they know that ahead of time.
Yeah, we do usually end up talking about it because I will get some complaints. If they send an email at 5:45 and I've left at 5:30 and they don't hear from me until Monday, they can be a little grumpy about that, and I'll just explain that there are opportunities for these conversations. And it's usually, almost always something that
I always enjoy flexible time. I'm faculty member, so I was able to schedule my classes at time which is working for me. I most of the day still am in my office, but lately we have this system that every single time slot need to have the same percentage of classes. I don't see any rationale behind this, but of course I was asked to switch my class from 10 o'clock into 8 in the morning, yes, because the percentage doesn't match, yes. So I don't know if we can do something about this, because if I don't see any reason that the previous system didn't work, and this is working better, fine, but just to have the same percentage, I don't know if this is making students happy or anybody happy, but. And another question, I don't know if anything can be done. I almost never use sick days, so long time ago I reached 200 level. So of course I am not gaining anything now, yes? But now it's not such a problem, but we're supposed to have 200 days when we retire. So doesn't matter if I didn't use anything for like 20 years, but if I will be close to retirement, if I will fall sick, and during the last 2 months I need to use those days, then this is big chance that I will finish and retire with being short, yes? Is there any chance that somebody can, for example, say that we can save, or say we never can use more than 200, but we can accumulate, so we will have a little more? Because right now this is like, maybe I need to use every month something, yes, or but this still won't help if somebody will get sick during the last month of working, yes? So it's not really fair system.
So,
Yeah, Darryl,
I'll jump in
please.
here. So, part of my work-life balance is that I was on 3 different negotiations teams for UUP. And that issue specifically came up at every single one of those negotiations. I'm kind of assuming that the current one, that's also been an issue. And you are absolutely correct, UUP has suggested a number of alternatives of kind of a separate bank that you get to use, kind of a pro rata bank that sits out there just in case. The state has been unwilling to go down that particular path. So, yes, clearly an issue. It's been talked about, but the state is just not been willing to go there.
And if I could speak just in terms of 7% rule, that's not really a rule, but they're treating it as such. We've heard a lot of complaints and a lot of concerns, not yet from students, but I imagine we soon will. It's causing a lot of headaches for departments as they're planning their spring, and even some departments planning their fall schedule. So something we're aware of, something that we're looking into, trying to.
Yeah, we have problem to schedule meeting in our department because if everybody spread it over all times, then this is almost no time when we can meet. Yes?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
I'm not a teaching faculty member, and I used to be in student development, so I knew more about what was going on, but I have no idea what you're talking about with the 7% thing. Can you just give a 30-second explanation what it is?
Yes, I got in a little group thing there. So, the 7% rule is, I don't want to speak for the provost because he's not here, but essentially that only 7% of courses in a given department have to be scheduled during one of those specific times. So it's a way to spread out courses. There could be some legitimacy to it in certain departments. The students aren't able to take all of their necessary or required courses because there's so much overlap. They're all scheduled at the same time. But the 7% rule seems arbitrary, at least to me. I'm not sure what's backing it up, but I'm sorry.
No, that's okay,
for that
thank you,
split.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, jumping off of what Laura said, is there any plan in the next, or the current contract that's being negotiated for telecommuting to be something that we have at our fingertips? Is that by supervisor? Is there gonna be a campus policy? I know it works well for some staff and obviously not for faculty who have to be in the classroom, but.
Okay, so, again, this issue has come up multiple times in negotiations. If you actually read the agreement between New York State and UUP, there is nothing that precludes the campus from going down that path.
So it can be a campus-specific policy.
Correct. So, that's the short answer.
Thank you.
I guess, I'm kind of a type A personality. I usually work 60 to 70 hours a week, so it's very hard to get a work-life balance under those circumstances. And over the past year, I've been thinking, why is it that I am deriving less and less satisfaction in terms of the amount of hours that I'm putting in? And it dawned on me over the past year, and I started thinking about this, and there's a lot of nonsense now, right? So it's not the number of hours, it's the quality of what happens during those hours which upsets my notion of life-work balance. And I've noticed that with the proliferation of administrative offices, and also proliferation of various communication tactics and mechanisms that exist, that one of these offices have this tendency, I've become acutely aware of this, that they're just trying to really justify their existence. And email after email, meeting after meeting, committees and subcommittees and task forces and rules, such as that 7% we were talking about. Well, one way I'm dealing with this is anything that comes from the dean's office, the provost's office, or an office on campus goes straight to my junk mail, period. At the end of the week, I will look at it. And if it's important, like on a Friday afternoon, then I will address it. Because it creates the crisis of the day. And I don't want that. Because I don't operate with schedules, I don't operate with lists, I'm not good at that. My tendency is to try to resolve the problem as soon as it occurs. Well, if problems are being manufactured, then it's going to take up all of my time. And so I've noticed that that's one strategy that I have been using. I'm also concerned that, I had just gotten back from Moscow yesterday, and in many ways we are at where we were, where Russia was 30 years ago. Things don't work anymore, right? Everything is, the systems have broken down, I notice, in this country. Things just do not function. I don't know if it's people are incapable of doing their jobs, they're fatigued, whatever, but I'm finding that I'm having to take more and more responsibility to not count on anybody to help me out, because it just doesn't get done. And I don't know if others are experiencing that situation or not, but I am definitely trying to figure out strategies myself to make my time more efficient and not get sucked up into a bunch of nonsense that seems to be proliferating out of these various offices and these positions being created.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone on the panel want to speak to that? I certainly can. And I've only been here for about 7 years, and I've noticed the same thing. I've noticed that the quality of the time that I'm putting in is not what it used to be. I spend much more time in various meetings, dealing with various issues that pop up, and less time with my students, less time in the classroom, at least in terms of proportion of my time being spent here. So I totally agree with everything that you said. I guess I'm not in a position to tell anyone to delete or cross out the administration's emails, but I don't look at those either. Or until the end of the week, I'll save myself a little bit there.
But putting it into the junk mail, it's not that I'm deleting it.
Right.
It's that I'm postponing it. I don't want the crisis of the day arriving all via email.
Right.
That's not necessary for me to address. And
Yeah.
by the way, in almost all cases, none of this has amounted to any kind of crisis for me.
No. I totally agree. Yeah.
So Kate Stanley from International Ed, in case you don't know me, but I just wanted to say that I, as a recommendation to everyone, I just started reading a book called Thrive by Arianna Huffington, who's the founder of the Huffington Post. And she actually started her book after she collapsed in her office in 2007 after being exhausted and overworking. And I think it's a great book. I just started it, I'm like 2 chapters in, but highly recommend it because it does talk to some of the topics that we've been talking about today with work-life balance.
Great. Thanks.
I feel like as a state institution, we're behind some of the leaders in the field of creating work-life balance. And I was reading an article on LinkedIn probably about 3 months ago, and I believe it was about Netflix, who now provides their employees unlimited vacation time. And their point behind that is that when their employees are on vacation, they're checking their email, they're answering phone calls, they're taking conference calls, and so they're still taking vacation. So they say, well, why should we nickel and dime our employees for vacation when they're working, when they're away? They don't want to encourage it, but they also recognize that they're doing it, and what they found was people weren't abusing that. That wasn't abused at all. In fact, their employees are actually higher performing. I came from an institution that offered unlimited sick time. It wasn't that people took their sick time all the time. It was just you didn't have to worry about that if you did get sick or something else happened. I think, and I don't know the ins and outs of all of that and why, but I think at times that makes people feel more appreciated, more trusted, so they are willing to put the time in and do the work. Sometimes I don't think not being able to negotiate that or allow that doesn't allow us to feel appreciated or trusted.
Jim?
Speaking of that, I think as a nation, in some ways the United States is behind certain aspects of work-life balance. I moved to the United States from Canada 16 years ago, and it's been very good to me, but there are ways that the United States really can improve. In Canada, I had my son in Canada. I had maternity leave that lasted 7 months. Part of it was paid. I think my firm paid, I think, up to 90% of my salary. Then we have something called, employment insurance, beg your pardon, which paid me, it wasn't, maybe 50% of my salary or up to 50% of it, the duration of 7 months. I was able to stay home with my son for that long. My job was guaranteed. After I left Canada, that increased in the province that I was from, Ontario, to 50 weeks. Men can take paternal leave, women can take the maternal leave. I think the United States, I don't know, Australia may be in there too, maybe they're caught up, is one of the few nations, the so-called developed Western nations that does not have a really comprehensive parental leave. There's not much we can do about that in this room, but it's something I like to bring up to people, that as advanced as we are not in that particular area.
Just to pick up on both of them, just very briefly. And you were right to bring up trust, because that's what it's all about. Supervisors can work things out if they want to. Okay? And to say there are things people in this room can do, and I'll get on my political soapbox for like 5 seconds, which is there's an election every 2 years for our congresspeople and our state assembly and state senators, and every 4 years we get to vote for a president. And if we want things to change, those are the people who will make it happen. I'm not taking a position, but just if you want things to change, that will make things change.
I never really understood advantage in practice of sick leave as faculty member, because in practice this look like if you like to take 1 day of sick leave, this is your responsibility to ask your friends and later repay them. This is,
I understand
yes.
the expectation you place on yourself, but that is not a requirement.
But this is done, yes. And on the other hand, I remember one of the colleagues went through surgery, so he was not on campus for 3 weeks. We were asked by chair to substitute for this colleague. And of course, nobody is getting paid for teaching more, yes, because again, somebody mentioned this is rule, you need to teach for like specific number of like 7 weeks or 8 weeks before you get paid. So if this is sick leave and we, deserve this, if somebody needs to cover somebody classes, why we are not getting paid? Yes, so this is between like almost done, like this is between colleagues. I'm sick, so I ask my friend to cover for me, and college is not helping, not doing anything. At least this is what I saw for so many years.
Okay, so you are describing reality?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know it because I have 3 other campuses and that is the way it operates. Absolutely, that is reality. When you request sick leave, you're sick. You have no obligation. And frankly, it's illegal for you to do any work while you're on sick leave. Okay? It is illegal for you to do that, because then the argument is that you're not really sick because you're working. Okay? Now, I would say you're in a department, somebody doesn't feel well a particular day, it's your responsibility as a colleague to cover that day. Now, if I'm sick, I don't call you and say, could you cover my class? I call the chair, and then the chair makes a bunch of phone calls and deals with it. If it's more than a couple of days, then there should be some kind of compensation.
But it's not.
There can be, and again, it comes back to several people said, just say no. I mean, Nancy Reagan was right, just say no. Okay? Because guess what? If you continue to do this, they will take advantage of you. My soapbox. They will take advantage of you. If that's what you want, then continue to bend over backwards, don't get paid, do the extra classes, answer phone calls and emails at all hours of the night and day, on weekends. Sure, they're happy if you continue to do that. So you have to basically say, I'm not gonna do it. I do the same thing that you do in terms of my email. Whatever is the last kind of like 5, 6 o'clock on Friday, and then it's Monday morning for me. The important people have my phone number. And I think once in 7+ years I've ever gotten a phone call on the weekend.
Okay, well, we're a little bit over, and I just want to give the panel an opportunity to get some food. So thank you all for joining us again, and I hope to see you at the next one. Thanks so much.